Driverly.com, unlimited drama series.
The burner phone in my wife's glove compartment had exactly 47 messages from Brad Lanning, and every single one made me want to punch something or someone. Nick's working late again. Red Tuesday's gem. Perfect time for dessert at my place. Thursday was even better. Your husband couldn't satisfy a parking meter. Good thing you've got me. And Friday's masterpiece. Does the security boy still think he's protecting his little princess? Wait till he finds out what daddy's been up to. I'm Nick Harper, 39 years old, and until 5 minutes ago, I thought I had a marriage worth saving. Now I'm sitting in my driveway at 2 in the morning, reading about my wife's affair with Dallas's sleaziest mortgage broker, and realizing that my 14-year-old daughter Emma might be in more danger than I ever imagined. The rain drummed against my truck's windshield like bullets, each drop echoing the rage building in my chest. Julia's BMW sat in the garage, still warm from whatever client meeting had kept her out until midnight. 3 nights this week. Always the same excuse. Always the same lie. I've been installing security systems for 15 years. You learn to spot the tells. The way people's eyes dart when they're hiding something. The nervous fidgeting. The overcompensation. Julia had been exhibiting every single red flag for months, and I'd been too trusting or too stupid to see it. The house was dark except for Emma's bedroom window. My daughter, the only good thing to come out of this marriage, was probably lying awake, wondering why mommy and daddy barely spoke anymore. Kids notice everything, even when you think you're being clever. I scrolled through more messages, my jaw clenching tighter with each revelation. Brad wasn't just screwing my wife, he was planning something bigger. References to handling the Emma situation and clearing the path made my blood run cold. The front door opened, and Julia appeared in her silk robe, backlit by the hallway light. Even at 43, she was stunning. High cheekbones, auburn hair that cost more than my monthly truck payment, and legs that had once made me forget my own name. Now she just looked like an expensive stranger. She tapped on my window, her wedding ring catching the porch light. 20 years of marriage, reduced to a prop in her performance. Nick, what are you doing out here? I powered down the window, keeping the phone hidden. Thinking. About what? She wrapped the robe tighter, shivering in the October air. You've been acting strange lately. Strange. That was rich, coming from someone who'd been living a double life for God knows how long. Just work stuff, I said. Go back inside. I'll be in soon. She hesitated, studying my face. Julia was smart. Too smart for her own good. She'd built a real estate empire by reading people, by knowing exactly what they wanted to hear. But she'd gotten careless with her secrets. Emma asked about you today, she said. She's worried you don't love her anymore. The manipulation was so smooth, so practiced, that I almost admired it. Turn the conversation away from her behavior. Make me the bad guy. Make me feel guilty for discovering her betrayal. I love Emma more than life itself, I said quietly. She knows that. Do she? Because lately, you've been distant. Cold. She notices these things, Nick. I looked up at my daughter's window, where a shadow moved behind the curtains. Emma was awake, probably listening to us argue again. The guilt hit me like a physical blow. We'll talk tomorrow, I said. It's late. Julia nodded and headed back inside, but not before I caught her checking her own phone. Probably texting Brad about our conversation. Probably planning their next move. I sat in the truck for another hour, reading through the messages, taking screenshots, building a case I hoped I'd never need to use. But deep in my gut, I knew this was just the beginning. The last message was from earlier tonight. Package is ready for pickup. Sunday night, Lake Ray Roberts. Bring the car. Package. Like my daughter was cargo to be moved around. I started the truck and backed out of the driveway. If Julia and Brad thought they could use Emma as a pawn in their sick game, they were about to learn why you don't mess with a man who's spent 15 years learning how to protect things. The rain followed me as I drove through our neighborhood, past the million-dollar homes and manicured lawns that Julia loved so much. This place was her kingdom, where she ruled over the other real estate wives with their book clubs and charity galas and carefully orchestrated affairs. But kingdoms fall, and queens get dethroned. My phone buzzed with a text from Tony Reeves, my old army buddy, who'd gone into private investigation after leaving the service. I'd called him earlier, asked him to do some digging on Brad Lanning. Found your boy. You're not going to like what I learned. Call me. I pulled into a 24-hour diner parking lot and dialed Tony's number. He answered on the first ring. Nick, Jesus, man, how long has this been going on? The affair? Couple months, maybe longer. Why? It's not just an affair. Brad's in deep financial trouble. His mortgage company is under federal investigation. He's been running a Ponzi scheme, using new client deposits to pay off old loans. My stomach dropped. How deep? Deep enough that he's looking at 20 years if they can prove it. And get this, 3 of his investors have daughters around Emma's age. All 3 families received anonymous tips about their kids being in danger. All 3 moved their money offshore and disappeared. The pieces clicked into place, like a lock opening. He's using the kids as leverage. Looks that way. And Nick, your wife isn't just sleeping with him. She's been helping him move money through real estate transactions. Fake sales, inflated appraisals, the whole 9 yards. I closed my eyes, feeling the last of my illusions crumble. How much does she know? Everything. Julia's not a victim here, brother. She's a co-conspirator. The rain had turned to sleet, coating my windshield with ice, like the cold spreading through my chest, freezing the part of me that still wanted to believe this was all a misunderstanding. What about Emma? That's why I told you to call. Brad's been asking questions about custody laws. What happens to assets when a parent dies? How to establish legal guardianship? Son of a bitch. The words came out like a growl. There's more. Julia filed preliminary divorce papers yesterday. She's claiming you're mentally unstable, potentially dangerous to Emma. She's building a case to get full custody and move out of state. My hands gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles went white. Where? The Cayman Islands. Brad's got accounts there, shell companies, the whole setup. I thought about Emma's worried face, the way she'd been clinging to me lately. The questions about whether Daddy was okay, whether Mommy still loved us. She'd sensed something was wrong, even if she couldn't put it into words. What do you need from me? I asked. Evidence, documentation, something that proves they're planning to take Emma illegally. I've got the phone, screenshots of their messages. That's a start. But we need more, something that shows intent to flee the country with a minor. I started the truck, already forming a plan. Give me 48 hours. Nick, be careful. If they're desperate enough to kidnap kids, they're desperate enough to do anything. Let them try, I said, and meant it. The drive home took 15 minutes, but it felt like a lifetime. Every street corner, every familiar landmark looked different now. This wasn't my neighborhood anymore. It was enemy territory. Julia's car was still in the garage, but the lights were off. She was probably upstairs, texting Brad about our conversation, fine-tuning their plan to destroy my life and steal my daughter. I parked in the driveway and sat for a moment, gathering my thoughts. 15 years of marriage, 14 years of raising Emma together, thousands of shared memories, inside jokes, quiet moments that had once felt sacred. All of it built on lies. The house was silent when I entered, but I could hear Julia moving around upstairs, getting ready for bed, or maybe getting ready to run. I climbed the stairs slowly, each step creaking under my weight. Emma's door was cracked open. I peeked inside and saw her sleeping peacefully, her dark hair spread across the pillow. She looked so young, so innocent. The idea of anyone using her as a bargaining chip made me want to break things. I continued to the master bedroom, where Julia sat at her vanity, removing her makeup. She watched me in the mirror, her expression unreadable. Feel better? She asked. About what? Whatever was bothering you outside. I sat on the edge of the bed, studying her reflection. Even now, knowing what I knew, she was beautiful. But beauty without loyalty was just an attractive lie. Julia, is there anything you want to tell me? She paused, mascara wand halfway to her lashes. Like what? Anything. About work, about us, about Emma. I don't know what you mean. The lie came so easily, so naturally, that I almost believed her myself. She'd been practicing deception for months, maybe years. I was just another mark to be managed. Okay, I said. Good night. I kissed her forehead, a gesture that felt like goodbye, and headed to the guest bedroom. Julia didn't try to stop me. She was probably relieved. I lay in the narrow bed, staring at the ceiling, planning my next move. Tony was right. I needed more evidence. But I also needed to protect Emma. If Julia and Brad were planning to run, they'd move fast once they realized I was onto them. My phone buzzed with another message from the burner phone I'd cloned. Brad again. Weather's perfect for a weekend trip. Bring warm clothes. Sunday. 2 days from now. Whatever they were planning, it was happening soon. I closed my eyes and tried to sleep, but my mind kept racing. In the army, we'd learned that the best defense was a good offense. Don't wait for the enemy to make their move. Strike first, strike hard, and make sure they can't strike back. Julia and Brad thought they were playing chess with an amateur. They were about to discover that I'd been studying the board a lot longer than they realized. The next morning, Emma was already at the breakfast table when I came downstairs. She looked up from her cereal with worried eyes. "Daddy, are you and Mommy getting divorced?" The question hit me like a punch to the gut. I sat down beside her, choosing my words carefully. "Why would you ask that, sweetheart?" "Because you slept in the guest room, and Mommy was crying on the phone last night." Crying. Probably tears of frustration that her plan wasn't moving fast enough. "Sometimes grown-ups need space to work through problems," I said. "But no matter what happens between Mommy and me, I will always love you. Always." Emma nodded, but she didn't look convinced. "Are we going to move away?" "What makes you think that?" "Mommy's been looking at houses online, in other countries." My blood went cold. "Other countries?" "Yeah, islands and stuff." She said it was for work, but Emma shrugged. It didn't feel like work. I reached over and squeezed her hand. "Emma, if anyone ever tries to take you somewhere without asking me first, what do you do? Run away and call you?" "That's right. And if you can't call, what do? Scream really loud and tell everyone that you're not my real daddy." We'd practiced this scenario when she was younger, after a custody case at work had gone bad. I'd never imagined we'd need it in our own family. "Good girl," I said. "Now finish your breakfast. You'll be late for school." Julia appeared in the kitchen, already dressed for work in a power suit that probably cost more than most people's cars. She kissed Emma's forehead and nodded at me. "I'll be late tonight," she said. "Client dinner." "Which client?" I asked. "The Hendersons. They're looking at that property in Plano." Another lie. The Hendersons had closed on their house 3 weeks ago. I'd installed their security system myself. "Have fun," I said. After Julia left, I called in sick to work and drove Emma to school myself. I wanted to talk to her teachers, make sure they knew not to release her to anyone without my explicit permission. The principal, Mrs. Davidson, was understanding but concerned. "Is there something we should know about Mr. Harper?" "Just being cautious," I said. "Divorce proceedings can get complicated." She nodded knowingly. "We'll make sure Emma stays safe." From school, I drove to Tony's office in downtown Dallas. He worked out of a converted warehouse in Deep Ellum, surrounded by art galleries and trendy restaurants. The contrast between his gritty profession and the hipster neighborhood always amused me. Tony was waiting with a thick folder and a grim expression. "It's worse than I thought," he said without preamble. "How much worse?" "Brad's not just running a Ponzi scheme. He's laundering money for some very bad people. Drug money, mostly. The kind of people who don't forgive and forget when their cash goes missing." I sat down hard in his guest chair, and Julia, up to her neck. "She's been using her real estate license to create fake transactions, moving dirty money through property sales. The house you're living in, bought with drug money." The room spun around me. "That's impossible. We've lived there for 10 years. The original purchase was legitimate. But Julia's been refinancing it every few years, each time with money from Brad's operation. You're sitting on about $2 million in laundered cash." Jesus Christ. It gets worse. The feds are closing in. They've got wiretaps, financial records, the whole 9 yards. Brad knows he's going down, and he's planning to take the money and run, with Julia and Emma. Tony slid a photograph across the desk. It showed Julia and Brad at a bank in the Cayman Islands, signing paperwork. "When was this taken?" "Last month. Julia told you she was at a real estate conference in Austin, right?" I nodded, remembering the weekend. She'd seemed excited about the trip, more animated than she'd been in months. Now I knew why. They've got accounts set up, fake identities prepared, the whole escape plan ready to go. All they need is Emma, and they disappear forever. Over my dead body. That might be the plan, Nick. Look at this. He handed me another photo, this one showing Brad talking to a man I didn't recognize. The man was built like a brick wall, with prison tattoos covering his arms. Who's that? Marcus Vega, enforcer for the Gutierrez cartel. Word is, Brad owes them $3 million. Money that was supposed to be invested in legitimate businesses, so he's desperate. Desperate enough to kill, if that's what it takes to get his hands on Emma's trust fund. I stared at him. What trust fund? The one Julia set up last year. Didn't she tell you? Emma's the beneficiary of a $2 million life insurance policy. Guess who the trustee is if something happens to you? The pieces fell into place with sickening clarity. Julia, and guess who becomes Emma's legal guardian if Julia can prove you're mentally unstable or dangerous? Brad! Bingo! They kill you, take Emma and the money, and disappear to a country with no extradition treaty. It's actually a pretty good plan. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the Dallas skyline. Somewhere out there, my wife and her lover were planning my murder and my daughter's kidnapping. The thought should have terrified me. Instead, it just made me angry. What do you need me to do? I asked. We need to catch them in the act.
90 days of calls to the same number. You bought a burner for her.
Give it to me.
One reason not to drop it.
Watch more on Grammarly.com.
Get them on record planning the crime. How? Tony smiled for the first time since I'd arrived. You're a security expert, Nick. Time to put those skills to work. We spent the next 3 hours planning our operation. Tony would handle surveillance and evidence gathering. I would play the oblivious husband, giving Julia and Brad enough rope to hang themselves. By the time I left Tony's office, I had a plan. It was risky, potentially dangerous, and definitely illegal in several states. But it was also the only way to save Emma and expose the truth. I drove home through the afternoon traffic, my mind racing with possibilities. Julia's car was already in the driveway, unusual for a weekday. Either her client dinner had been canceled, or she was preparing for something bigger. Emma met me at the door, her face flushed with excitement. Daddy, Mommy says we're going on a surprise trip this weekend. My heart stopped. A trip? To a lake house. She says it'll be fun, just the three of us. Julia appeared behind Emma, wearing a smile that didn't reach her eyes. I thought it would be nice to get away from the city, reconnect as a family. Which lake? I asked. Ray Roberts. Brad recommended it. He says it's very private. Of course he did. Private meant isolated. Isolated meant no witnesses. Sounds great, I said, matching her fake enthusiasm. When do we leave? Tomorrow night. After Emma gets out of school. Less than 24 hours. They were moving faster than I'd expected. I'll pack tonight, I said. Julia nodded and headed upstairs, probably to make final preparations. Emma bounced around the living room, chattering about the trip, completely unaware that her mother was planning to destroy our family. I waited until Julia was in the shower, then called Tony. They're moving tomorrow night. Lake Ray Roberts. I'll be ready. What about Emma? I'll figure something out. Nick, be careful. If they're planning to kill you, they won't hesitate to do it in front of Emma. They won't get the chance. That night, I lay in the guest bed, listening to Julia move around the house. She was packing, but not for a family vacation. I could hear her on the phone, speaking in hushed tones, probably coordinating with Brad. Around midnight, she left. I heard the garage door open and her car pull out of the driveway. Meeting Brad, most likely, for final preparations. I got up and checked on Emma. She was sleeping peacefully, unaware that her world was about to change forever. I kissed her forehead and made a silent promise. Whatever happened, I would keep her safe. Julia returned an hour later, moving quietly through the house. She paused outside the guest bedroom, and I pretended to be asleep. After a few seconds, she continued to the master bedroom. Friday crawled by like a death march. Julia was nervous, checking her phone constantly, jumping at every sound. Emma was excited about the trip, asking questions about the lake house, what activities we'd do, whether we could go fishing. I played my part, acting like the devoted husband and father, while secretly preparing for war. I packed a bag with clothes, but also included items Julia wouldn't expect. Pepper spray, zip ties, a digital recorder, and a GPS tracker. Tony called around noon with an update. I've got eyes on the lake house. It's isolated, like you said. One road in and out. But I also found something else. What? Brad's not working alone. He's got 2 other guys with him. Ex-cons by the look of them. My stomach clenched. Armed? Probably. This isn't a kidnapping anymore, Nick. It's an execution. What about the police? We don't have enough evidence yet. Everything we have is circumstantial. We need them to make the first move. And if they kill me before we can stop them, then Emma becomes an orphan, and they get away with everything. The weight of the situation settled on my shoulders like a lead blanket. I was walking into a trap, with my daughter's life hanging in the balance. There's one more thing, Tony said. I traced the ownership of the lake house. Guess who it belongs to? Brad? Julia. She bought it 6 months ago, using one of her shell companies. This has been in the works for a long time. 6 months. While I was installing security systems and trying to save our marriage, Julia had been planning my murder. Emma came home from school bubbling with excitement about the trip. She'd told her friends about the lake house, about the family vacation we were taking. Her innocence was heartbreaking. "Daddy, can we roast marshmallows?" she asked. "Sure, sweetheart. Whatever you want." Julia appeared in the kitchen, dressed casually but still managing to look like a magazine cover. "Ready for our adventure?" "Can't wait," I lied. We loaded our bags into Julia's BMW, Emma chattering in the back seat about all the fun we were going to have. Julia drove, her hands steady on the wheel, her expression calm. She looked like a woman heading to a spa weekend, not a murder scene. The drive to Lake Ray Roberts took 45 minutes through increasingly rural terrain. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the empty fields. Emma fell asleep in the back seat, exhausted from the excitement. "She's been looking forward to this all week," Julia said quietly. "I know. Nick, I want you to know that whatever happens, I do love you. I've always loved you." The words should have comforted me. Instead, they sounded like a eulogy. "I love you too," I said. And for a moment, I almost meant it. The lake house appeared through the trees like something from a horror movie. It was bigger than I'd expected, with a wraparound porch and large windows overlooking the water. Brad's Porsche was already parked in the driveway, along with a black SUV I didn't recognize. "Looks like Brad beat us here," I said. "He wanted to get everything ready," Julia replied, but her voice was tight with tension. We parked and got our bags from the trunk. Emma woke up as we approached the front door, rubbing her eyes and looking around at the unfamiliar surroundings. "It's pretty," she said. "Wait until you see the inside," Julia said. Brad opened the door before we could knock, wearing khakis and a polo shirt like he was hosting a barbecue. His smile was too wide, too practiced. "Welcome to paradise," he said, embracing Julia a little too long, a little too intimately. Emma noticed. Kids always noticed. "Where's my room?" she asked. "Upstairs," Brad said. "Second door on the right. There's a surprise waiting for you." Emma ran upstairs, her footsteps echoing through the house. I listened carefully, waiting for any sign of trouble, but she seemed genuinely delighted by whatever she'd found. "Nice place," I said to Brad. "Thanks. I thought you'd appreciate the privacy." The way he said it made my skin crawl. I glanced around the living room, noting the exits, the windows, the potential weapons, old habits from my army days. 2 men emerged from the kitchen, both built like linebackers. They nodded at Julia, but watched me with predatory eyes. "Friends of yours?" I asked Brad. "Business associates," he replied. "Don't worry about them." But I was worried, very worried. Emma came bounding down the stairs, holding a new tablet computer. "Look what was in my room." "Do you like it?" Julia asked. "I love it. Can I call Grandma and show her?" "Maybe later, sweetheart. Why don't you explore the house first?" Emma nodded and wandered off toward the kitchen. I watched her go, memorizing the layout, planning escape routes. "Drink?" Brad offered, gesturing toward a well-stocked bar. "Sure, whiskey." He poured 3 glasses, handing one to me and one to Julia. His hands were steady, but I could see sweat beading on his forehead. "To family," he said, raising his glass. "To family," Julia echoed. I sipped the whiskey, tasting nothing but betrayal. Around us, the house creaked and settled like an old man's bones. Outside, the lake lapped against the shore with a sound like whispered secrets. "So," I said, settling into an armchair, "what's the plan for tonight?" Brad and Julia exchanged a look that lasted a fraction of a second too long. "Just relax," Julia said. "Enjoy the peace and quiet." Sounds perfect, but nothing about this was perfect. The 2 men in the kitchen were watching Emma like hawks. Brad kept checking his watch. Julia's smile never wavered, but her eyes were cold as winter. I excused myself to use the bathroom, but instead slipped outside through a side door. The night air was crisp, carrying the scent of pine and lake water. I found Tony's position in the tree line and gave him a subtle hand signal. He responded with a flash of his penlight. He was ready. Back inside, Emma was showing Julia something on her new tablet. They looked so normal, so much like a mother and daughter enjoying a vacation, that I almost doubted my own suspicions. Almost. "Daddy, look!" Emma called. "This game is so cool." I walked over and admired her screen, but my attention was on the two men who had moved closer. One of them had his hand inside his jacket. "Emma," I said quietly, "why don't you take your tablet upstairs? I need to talk to Mommy about grown-up stuff." "Okay." She kissed my cheek and headed for the stairs. As soon as she was out of sight, the atmosphere in the room changed. The pretense dropped away like a mask, leaving only cold calculation. "Sit down, Nick," Brad said, and this time it wasn't a suggestion. The two men stepped forward, flanking my chair. Up close, I could see the bulges of concealed weapons. "I know," I said simply. Julia's face went pale. "Know what? About the affair, about the money laundering, about the plan to kill me and take Emma." Brad laughed, but it sounded forced. "That's quite an imagination you have. Is it? Then explain the burner phone. Explain the Cayman Islands bank account. Explain why Marcus Vega has been asking questions about my life insurance policy." The silence that followed was deafening. Even the lake seemed to stop lapping at the shore. "How long have you known?" Julia asked finally. "Long enough to prepare." "Prepare for what?" I smiled, and for the first time in days, it felt genuine. "You'll see." Brad nodded to one of his men, who reached inside his jacket. But before he could draw his weapon, the lights went out. The house plunged into darkness, and chaos erupted. I rolled out of my chair as gunshots rang out, muzzle flashes illuminating the room like deadly lightning. Glass shattered. Wood splintered. Someone screamed. "Emma!" I shouted, scrambling toward the stairs. "Get him!" Brad's voice, high with panic. I reached the staircase as emergency lighting kicked in, bathing everything in an eerie red glow. Emma was at the top of the stairs, clutching her tablet, eyes wide with terror. "Daddy! Stay there, sweetheart! Don't move!" More gunshots. The front door exploded inward, and Tony burst through with two other men, all wearing tactical gear. The cavalry had arrived. "Federal agents!" Tony shouted. "Drop your weapons!" But Brad's men weren't giving up without a fight. They took cover behind furniture, returning fire with automatic weapons. The living room became a war zone. I crawled up the stairs, keeping low, trying to reach Emma. Halfway up, a hand grabbed my ankle. One of Brad's thugs, blood streaming from a head wound, was trying to drag me back down. I kicked him in the face with my free foot, feeling his nose break under my heel. He let go, tumbling backward down the stairs. "Emma, come here!" She ran to me, and I pulled her into a protective embrace. Around us, the gunfight continued, but Tony's team had the advantage of training and superior positioning. "Daddy, I'm scared." "I know, baby. It's going to be okay." But I wasn't sure it would be. Brad and Julia had vanished in the chaos, and I could hear movement on the second floor. They were coming for Emma. I carried her into the nearest bedroom and barricaded the door with a dresser. The window overlooked the lake, too high to jump safely. Footsteps in the hallway. A whispered conversation I couldn't quite make out. Then Julia's voice, artificially sweet. "Emma, sweetie? Come out. Mommy needs to talk to you." Emma looked at me with confusion and betrayal. "Why is Mommy acting weird?" "Because she's not the person we thought she was." The doorknob rattled. When it didn't turn, something heavy slammed against the door. The dresser scraped across the floor. "Nick!" Brad's voice now, all pretense gone. "Send out the girl, and we'll make this quick." "Go to hell." Another impact. The door was starting to splinter. I looked around the room desperately, searching for anything that could be used as a weapon. A lamp, a picture frame. Nothing that would stop a man with a gun. The door burst open, shoving the dresser aside. Brad stepped through, holding a pistol. Julia right behind him. In the red emergency lighting, they looked like demons. "Step away from her, Nick," Brad said. "No, I'll kill you right here in front of her." "Is that what you want?" Emma was crying now, clinging to my shirt. "Daddy, what's happening?" "Sometimes people we love turn out to be monsters," I said, never taking my eyes off Brad. "Last chance," he said, raising the gun. The window behind us exploded inward in a shower of glass. Tony swung through on a rope, tackling Brad before he could fire. They hit the floor hard, grappling for the weapon. Julia lunged for Emma, but I intercepted her, grabbing her wrists. "You're not taking her. She's my daughter. You sold her for dirty money." We struggled, crashing into the wall. Julia was stronger than she looked, desperate with the fury of a cornered animal. Her fingernails raked across my face, drawing blood. Behind us, Tony and Brad were still fighting for the gun. It went off, the bullet punching a hole in the ceiling. Plaster rained down like snow. "Emma, run!" I shouted. She bolted for the door, but Julia broke free from my grip and chased after her. I tackled Julia from behind, sending us both tumbling into the hallway. "You bastard!" she screamed. "You've ruined everything. I've saved everything that matters." The gun went off again. This time, Brad screamed. Tony had won their struggle, but at a cost. His left arm was bleeding heavily. "It's over," he gasped, pointing the weapon at Julia. She looked around wildly, seeing her dreams of escape crumbling. The federal agents had secured the first floor. Her accomplices were dead or captured. Brad was writhing on the floor, clutching a shattered shoulder. "This isn't how it was supposed to happen," she whispered. "It never is," I said. Emma appeared in the doorway, tears streaming down her face. "Daddy? Is Mommy going to jail?" I knelt down and pulled her close, shielding her from the worst of the carnage. "Yes, sweetheart. But you're safe now. That's all that matters."
Mom, Seymour,
Tony was talking into a radio, calling for medical assistance and backup. Outside, I could hear sirens approaching. The nightmare was finally over. Julia sat against the wall, staring at nothing, her perfect facade finally cracked beyond repair. "I loved you," she said quietly. "I really did." "No," I replied. "You loved the idea of me, the security I represented. But you never loved me enough to be honest." The paramedics arrived first, followed by a small army of federal agents. The lake house became a crime scene, swarming with investigators and photographers. Emma and I gave our statements, then were escorted to a safe location while the authorities sorted through the evidence. In